Welcome to another episode of All Bass Creations. What's going on, folks? Appreciate all y'all chiming in. Feel free to comment, hit that like button, subscribe and share, all that good stuff. So, we doing a pedalboard rundown today of how I have my rig set up at the moment. If those of you that follow me know, I typically have my rig's gonna change. Nothing I can do about that, but here's where I am right now. So let's get it popping. So first off, hope you all are having a wonderful day. You know, you got to have a good day on purpose. You know, don't happen by accident. So let's go. First off, of course, I'm primarily a bassist, right? For those of you that are new. So I do play piano and keys and drums and other stuff, but I'm primarily a bassist, right? So most of my rig is set up for me to be able to do all these different synth stuff with my pedal board without ever needing an actual MIDI controller. So all these synths that you're seeing, that you got a Enzo X here, Enzo X there, Future Impact, Q Mirror right there, the white pedal, and all of these different things track bass very well. So, you know, before we even get to all of that, let's go ahead and start where the pedal board starts. Pedal board is actually starting right here. This is my smaller gigging board, right? So it's like an abbreviated version of this bigger board. This bigger board, when I'm taking both of them, is when I'm doing my solo gigs or doing my own band's gigs. What's going on, Porch Bass? Appreciate you chiming in. Oh, I appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that, man. Y'all show me a lot of love, and I appreciate that all the time, man. And shout out to all y'all that have been following me for a while, and the Patreon subscribers. Thank you guys so much. So we starting right here with the Empress compressor, right? Let's take everything else off. Take everything off. All right. So, and the Pog 3, all right? So we're gonna just start with just our regular old bass sound coming through. Let me get this swirling out of here. Here we go. So let's get my dry bass going here. Let's get the actual sound here. Might have to bring that up. Right, so this is my dry bass sound, and these strings are pretty, you know, about ready to change, but you get the gist. Right, and I can get that much more shaped up if I wanted to. All right, so. All right, kick on the Empress compressor. Bring my volume back. And as you can see, it makes my bass very even though I have it EQ pretty scooped on my actual bass. Just so you know, I have the ratio set to a 2-to-1 on here, long attack, short release time, and we have that completely 100% wet with the high pass for the compressor here. And we have on the tone plus color with the 2.3K boost, right? And what that does is it just, without it, it on. They're pretty much about the same volume. So even in the very beginning of my signal chain, I'm already evening out my sound a good amount. And again, I'm only using a 2-to-1 ratio. So it's not like a super compressed sound either. Then we have up the deep freeze, which is, let me change the mode to automatic. Allows me to do things like that. And also can add some glissando to that. All right, so, you know, a great freeze pedal. And then I have up the MXR bass synth. Let's get this nailed down. And I'm gonna turn on a few other things real quick, just because these sounds are all at a certain volume to not otherwise by the end of the chain clip it. So I have, if you notice, everything right now seems like it's at a low volume. Really, it's not. Give me 1 second. Bring this up to here. So. So that's pretty much the setting I use for that, but I do have other settings on there, but that's pretty much what I'm using that for. Pretty much as a nice OC2 type octaver type of sound. Then I have, and of course, this one thing that a lot of people don't talk about with the MXR bass synth is the fact that you can set this foot switch to sustain. So say I wanted to play a note. I can now have it sustain that note, and I can still play over it. Okay, which ones in series versus parallel? So let me see. So the whole signal chain so far is running in series, which means everything is running into each other. So I have the Empress compressor running into the deep freeze into the MXR bass synth, and then that's running into the Meris Enzo X, you know, which has a lot of my things like envelope filter and all that stuff on there. Listen to my man play that. Appreciate you, bro. My man Alex Parchman in the house, folks. If you haven't heard of him, check out his music. Amazing trumpet player. We just did the Alexandria Jazz Fest on Saturday. Had a great time with you, brother. Right, so I use that a lot for. Bring this volume down. Everything from things like that to, of course, if I wanted to do some synth-based stuff and just play it, I have that ability as well. I also can play it from here. I just have everything else hooked up at the moment. Let me see. Bing, bing. So I have the ability, even on this smaller board, to still do synth bass and all that stuff with the Enzo Wax, and I can also have my pads. That same sound I can play with my bass. Mind you, it's not really set up for this right now, but we'll rock with it. good volume here. We'll go So, you know, this is just my regular gigging setup. As a matter of fact, this is what it sounds like by this pedal board by itself. I just have a separate, these Tonex ones are set the same, you know, so. But even if I want to just play my bass stuff, I got different preamps available right here with the Tonex 1 Plus. So far, just to recap, Empress compressor, deep freeze, MXR bass synth, going into the Meris Enzo X, running into the Tonex 1, right? Tonex 1 is where I do a lot of my preamps and all that stuff is in there. EQ curves and amp models, all that good stuff. So right now I have queued up a JHS color box, which you see over here on the desk, running into a Gensben Shuttle 9.0 tube amp, which is that head right there. Let me get my volume straight because I got it kind of loud from. There it is, that's why. Here we go. And, you know, again, the reason why these settings are so low is because by the time I get it to the rest of the processing, right, of just this board, because this board is running into that board, and I'll explain it in a second. So this is my complete gigging board, and along with the Atlas compressor there at the end. Another color box setting by itself. So, bam, this is my main gigging little, not main gigging, but like just for most gigs, this is more practical than taking this big 61 key size keyboard pedal board. But this is half the size, exactly the half of the size of this bigger one. So just imagine I had a third one sitting next to it over here, and you get the drift. All right, so coming out of Atlas compressor, we actually going to turn, well, just for a second. This IK Multimedia Tonex 1 Plus, right? Tonex is, I love Tonex pedals a lot. If you want to support the channel, hit me up. You know, I got some discounts and stuff I can help you out with IK Multimedia, and just some, you know, things that may get you somewhere. But through all of this, the Tonex 1 Plus allows me to have an audio interface. Say I just want to take my iPad, I can run my iPad into the Tonex 1 Plus, and I'll be able to have MIDI going to my iPad, and audio coming from my iPad as well, you know, all in one device with one cable. So it's a MIDI and audio interface all in one in this little tiny pedal, along with a multi-effects and amp models and all that other stuff. So definitely worth checking out. And, you know, especially if you got a MIDI-enabled rig like this, you can easily hook it up, and then you got your MIDI controllers, you control your amps and everything from there. All right. So From here, we come, so just to explain this pedal board real quick. Like I said, this whole pedal board is in series. So Empress compressor, deep freeze, MXR bass synth, Meris Enzo X, Tone X1 Plus, and the Source Audio Atlas compressor. And again, when I'm running this whole setup, I'm not using that Tone X1 there and that Atlas compressor at all, because I have that set up here later on. All right, we come into the Electro Harmonics tri-parallel mixer. Now, this little mixer here is, you don't really think that's something you need for your pedal board, but when I say it will elevate your pedal board so much, especially if you're using synths or if you have pedals that don't have the best true bypass circuits and things like that, this thing definitely helps out. And if you want to mix synths, say I wanted to play the MXR bass synth and the Source Audio C4 synth and the POG 3 all at once, this allows me to do that. Just like right now I have in this parallel mixer, we come into the input. First one is the Future Impact, which is this one. Second one is the Q-Mirror. The third loop is the other Enzo X there. So now I can use all three at once and just mix them any way I would like. So let's do this. So that's the Q-Mirror and the Enzo X right there. So let's just add a little bit of Mercury X. That's that Mercury X freeze function right there. That's just beautiful. So, and I can, if I wanted to play these same synths with my bass, I can just send my bass signal to it. And I still got control of them with the keyboard as well. And, and that's all three of those synths, the Future Impact, Q-Mirror, and Enzo X all at once. And again, like I said, the tri-parallel mixer is, it's not the first thing you're going to buy, but it definitely should be on your list at some point. Make sure y'all hit that like button for me. While y'all here, hit them reactions, that hype button, all that good stuff. Let's keep it rolling. So that kind of showed you those three synths, how they're hooked up into the board. And most of this we've been talking about so far is just the audio routing, right? So all of those can be played at the same time with my bass if I want to. So now you're hearing the Future Impact. Let's hear it separately. Future Impact. Oh, and you hear my dry signal still in there. Future Impact. Q-Mirror. Enzo X. And again, having that and being able to mix these synths all at once definitely opens up a new territory of sound, because now you're not just working with one synthesizer's ability. You're trying to get all three of them to work together sonically and things like that. So that works out amazing. And again, all of these can just immediately be played. Immediately. So you won't believe how convenient that is, But or, if you're not into synths, you may not even understand why that's important. And the fact that I can always incorporate my other Enzo X. Now I can incorporate all 4 synths, because if I turn these synths back off, turn the synth back off from there, just have the dry input, and now let's get this first Enzo X. That's the first Enzo X. Second Enzo X. Let's go with a brass sound. Second Enzo. Both of them. Throw that future impact in there. We want to bring these layers down. So that's the purpose of having all these synths, is so you can use them together. It's not necessarily them on their own. And I kind of look at this whole pedalboard setup in general as a modular keyboard type of thing. I don't look at it as, oh, these are individual things. These are individual parts of a bigger module, pretty much keyboard or synthesizer. Yeah, so that's kind of the dream right there. All right, so we're coming out of there into the POG 3. And the POG 3, of course, you heard me soloing on that on the intro. Make sure y'all hit that like button while you're here. Hit them reactions, all that good stuff. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. All right, let's keep it moving. From the POG 3 into the C4 synth. Done plenty of videos on that. And somebody asked why I had the C4 synth on there, right? I have it on there because I still like to use the filters and stuff for different things. Every single synth, even though a lot of them say they're using, a Moog style negative 24 dB filter or negative 12 dB filter, they all sound different. And the C4 synth has a bunch of unique filters in there as well. So me running a synth, just to give an example, me having a synth on the future impact. Let's get that to a nice. Peace. Right, having that filter on those same oscillators is not going to sound the same when you put a different filter on it. So let me see. Let me switch to a patch where it's just raw oscillators. Think around 50, 60, yeah, I think 50. Yep, raw oscillator. So with the raw oscillator, right, that's no filter. C4 synth. So it just gives me different flavors of filters there. And yes, it is a very subtle thing, but trust and believe, is there. All right. And I also like to use, let me see where we at. I love this sound as well. And with this, you definitely need a fret wrap. So now, can I build some similar to that on here on different pedals? Yeah, but it's not going to be that exact sound, you know. And I mostly use that for chordal stuff. Doing, you know, things like that. So I get those extra harmonies, and I like the way that the C4 Synth's harmonizer works. And to me, it works in a very musical way. Some harmonizers, when it gets to notes that aren't in the actual diatonic scale, it gets, for me, they made some odd choices in what they decided to do. But with this one, they all work. You can still use all the notes that are not diatonically and still use them very musically to weave in and out of different keys, even though you have the harmonizer set to just say, in this case, G major. Yeah, so, you know, if you want, with the Future Impact, if you want, like, shorter lines, if you want to play like shorter lines with it, or, you know, not shorter lines, more staccato lines, then you would turn up, I believe, the note off level. It's either the note on or note off level. Check which one, but I believe it's the note off level. You would set that to the higher parameter, and that'll actually allow you to separate notes a lot better when you're picking and playing the Future Impact itself, which is this red one. All right. Feel free to ask questions, folks. Appreciate you, Porch Bass. All right, coming out the C4 synth, we're going over to the V256 vocoder, which is still the best vocoder pedal out. If you're not familiar with it, tracks extremely well, no glitches. Like, I mean, it's probably one of the best tracking things I have. You know, so I definitely love that pedal, and that pedal is over 10 years old, and they still sound, it still hasn't been beat yet. So they sell them brand new still, I believe. But check out the V256 vocoder by Electro Harmonics. Again, that's that orange pedal there. All right, from there we jump over to the Tone X1, which again is running my preamps, and I'm not running any IRs or anything right now, just preamps, things like the Color Box, the Ampeg SGT, Gensler Magellan, the Aguilar AG preamp is in there. There's actually quite a few different James Mark bass. Yeah, it's just a lot. So also, all those preset packs are available on the Patreon. Make sure y'all check out the Patreon for all my preset packs of these different pedals. Future Impact V4 VIP, Maris Enzo X, Maris Mercury X, the C4 Synth. I got 20-something different preamp packs available for the Tone X1 and Tone X pedals and software and stuff. And so check that stuff out over on the Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. As well as the Zoom pedals. If you have a Zoom B6, MS60B Plus, MS70 CDR Plus, I've done packs for all those pedals too. So check all that stuff out over on Patreon. Definitely appreciate y'all. All right, let's rock and roll. So out of the Tone X1, well, the Tone X1 is also functioning in this right now as an audio interface for the iPad. And I'll explain how I'm getting MIDI to the iPad in a second once I get to the MIDI. Out of the Tone X1, we're coming stereo into the Mercury X, which is that blue modular reverb pedal, best reverb pedal on the market. From there, stereo into the Jamman Solo HD and stereo into the new X dual loop stereo pedal there. Out of that, stereo into the Canvas Stereo DI. See, glad I didn't have to explain it, you know. I appreciate you. So that's pretty much the whole audio routing of the pedal board, right? So that's only one layer of routing you have to do with a pedal board like this. You still have to do the MIDI routing, right? But let's just explore some sounds real quick, you know, see what we got here. You know, I made Genuine's Pony synth on each on the Future Impact, Chimera, and Enzo X. So check out that video as well when you get a chance. So I like to do layers, right? So I like to have different stuff on top. Let me see. Let's go to 32. Mind you, I don't have to do it this way. I don't know. I also have a Graviton M1 right here. This is actually a MIDI controller. So that I can literally control all this stuff with my feet if I wanted to. But we'll get to that in a second. And that was the reverb that dropped that, by the way. That's the Mercury X that did that drop. Alright, that's what it is on the drop. I love the Mercury X ability to freeze stuff. It's amazing. Appreciate you, Porch Bass. Holla at you. Thanks for stopping by. Usual suspects. So that's just the synths, right? The two Enzo X pedals, Chimera, and the Future Impact. Now we're gonna add some of the iPad stuff we have in. One of the main apps I'm using right now is the Roland Zenology app, Zenology GX app, which I've been loving. Add some really nice textures, and you can really create some nice synth stuff. So a lot of that ambient sound you're hearing, along with the EP, the choir, the water, the bird sounds you're hearing in there, is all coming from the Roland Zenology GX app, and along with the other synths. So it just makes for a really flexible rig, and incorporating our iPad without having to carry a whole keyboard just to get some really realistic, more realistic samples and things like that that aren't just, straight up synth sounds, But you can get straight up synth sounds with it. Don't sleep on the synth engine in here. It's the same one that's in the Roland, Phantom, and different things like that. That's why I particularly like it a lot. It sounds really good. All right. I like to also incorporate sample tank with some Nord um, Nord pads. So, you're just incorporating more sounds. So, and I also use the Neo Soul Keys app for piano and EP sounds. So that's literally what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different sounds, all stacked. It's really more than that, but stacked on top of each other, along with the Mercury X going crazy over there, adding this extra magic on top of everything. So, it makes for a really, at that point, super flexible rig. And of course, it's not hard to just strip anything back that I don't need. If I just wanted to, just a rolling G app. I wanted just piano. And I have it panned a certain way as well, so I can get rid of the pan. So, and of course, you could just have a regular old reverb if you wanted to with that. So I actually have like 3 or 4 pianos on here, but I actually like this one quite a bit. But then you got the EP and the Neo Soul Keys app. that EP as well. And that app's only like $5. So, or I think it's about 15 actually, but it's not too bad. $5 with the extra piano pack. So you're talking about $20 for that. What's going on? Appreciate you chiming in. So, bam. All right. So let's do some explaining now, like how the MIDI's going. So with this, MIDI is mostly, well, MIDI's throughout here as well, throughout the entire thing. So let's just start here. Well, we can't start there. Let's start here. So I have, this is the CME H2 MIDI Pro, which is the smaller version. I have a H4 MIDI Pro underneath the pedal board on that side. And it's just, these are the ports, and it's literally just sticking out like, matter of fact, it's installed exactly like this in there, and with the ports facing out and the power and everything else protected underneath the board. So with this, something like this allows me to do is have wireless MIDI and wired MIDI throughout my board. The bigger version just has 2 more physical 5-pin MIDI ports, and also incorporates wireless MIDI. So throughout the board, I have 2 lines of MIDI in running, because you don't want to really have more than 3 to 4 MIDI devices chained together. So I have the first chain starts at the Enzo X run. Hold on, let me put my bass down. You don't need to hold it to do all this explaining. Give me 1 second, folks. So, sorry about that. We have the Enzo X run into the POG 3, and then into the Future Impact, and then the Chimera. That's the end of that MIDI out chain. Then there's another MIDI out chain running from the New X dual looper to the Marius Mercury X, and then over to the V256 vocoder. And also, in terms of MIDI in, I also have a Graviton, Luminite Graviton M1. This allows me to have my presets for different pedals already stored in there, as well as, and mostly what it allows me to do is have the combinations of pedals stored in there for live performance. And the reason why that's necessary is to keep you from doing all this tap dancing to get to stuff. So if I need, for instance, the Future Impact doesn't have the greatest scroll feature in the world. So if I wanted to set up a preset just for the Future Impact to go to preset 32 and everything else to turn off, or go, in the future and say the Mercury X go to my synth bass patch on there, and I only wanted those 2 pedals on, I can do that with a press of a switch versus having to tap dance, turning things on and off. It becomes a hassle, and it becomes a distraction when you're performing. So you want to eliminate as much of a headache or anything that's going to distract you from giving the audience the best performance, which means you focusing primarily on your playing, not your pedals. And I know it seems like, well, how can you have all this stuff and not focus on it? That's why we have MIDI. So, all right. Then, now, just to explain things even further, so that's the whole MIDI chain for this pedal board setup. From here, we have right now a WIDI jack, WIDI master rather, and this allows you to have wireless MIDI into different MIDI devices. So I have one of these hooked into the output of the. This one's the output MIDI out. That's running from the out of the Enzo X, and the input side of it, MIDI in, is running to the Tone X1 Plus. And so when this pedal board is receiving wireless MIDI from this pedal board, from the H2 MIDI or H4 MIDI Pro, the bigger version of this, is sending MIDI out to this end of the WIDI master, right, into the Tone X1, and then from there Then from there, it's running out of there into the input of the Enzo X. And I know that seems like a cycle, but I have, because these CME H2 MIDI Pros are really flexible, you have a lot of routing options within the software, within the apps, especially if you have an iPad like I have incorporated into the rig. When I hook the CME, I'm using this, what is this called, a USB-C out of the H4 MIDI Pro running to the iPad as well. So that gives me all the routing to everything. And so I can literally go into the app on the iPad, do all my virtual MIDI routing everywhere. And, you know, that means when I say MIDI routing, I'm not just talking about where the signals are going. I mean the filtering as well, meaning if I don't want PC messages coming to change this Enzo X, I can set that up in there to do that with different channels. So that's a really convenient, you know, aspect, because I know some people don't know why I have the CME H4 MIDI Pro and a Graviton M1, because you can technically chain out of the Graviton M1 to all this stuff, but I wouldn't have all the abilities that I have and routing options that I have using this separate H4 MIDI Pro. So, all right, so that's the MIDI from there. Now, also, we got an out of here. I used to have this running wirelessly to the board, but I prefer having an actual physical MIDI cable, especially when I'm doing top tempo stuff. It typically works out a lot better. So I take that, and I also having one expression pedal. Well, two expression pedals pretty much controls this whole pedal board. I have to have a separate expression pedal for the Chimera because it doesn't have a MIDI command for the expression pedal, which I need y'all to do something about that banana effects. You know what I'm saying? Help me out now. All right. But the main expression pedal actually controls all the pedals, including all the apps and everything. So it controls attack and release times on the Enzo X pedals. It also controls the hold function and on the Mercury X, and it is the sustain pedal for all the apps. So if I don't even know if y'all can see it, but it's this zoom pedal here on the floor. So, and not only that, but I can have, with this Graviton M1, I can have different presets for the expression pedal, meaning I can have it set up in different presets just for the expression pedal to control different parameters of different pedals. That is so awesome. And this thing's only $150. That is a steal, you know. So right now that's doesn't include the hold modifier, but now we're gonna include that. And now we'll go to. So now it's controlling the hold modifier of the Mercury X, the expression pedal of the Enzo X, of that Enzo X and this one, and the sustain pedals, all through these 4 apps. Which means now I can minimize the amount of expression pedals, because if I need to send an expression pedal to different pedals, I can do all of that through MIDI. So I don't need to have 4 or 5 expression pedals. I can now reduce it to 2. Really, if they add that parameter to the Chimera, I can reduce it back down to 1. So that's really super convenient to have in your setup. Now, let's talk about these foot switches. Let me see. Can y'all even see the foot switches on the floor? Let's see. Now, y'all can't really see them too well. Let me see some. Yeah, still can't really see. Let me see. So hopefully y'all can see that. Let me check. Let me just check real quick. Okay, now they're visible. All right, so tied to that Graviton M1, I have the wireless foot switch, 10 foot switches, that pedal that goes with it. And this allows me to control the Graviton M1, ultimately the entire pedal board, without touching it, essentially. So I can scroll through different pages if you look on the screen right here, you can see me scrolling to different pages. I can stop and start loops. I can do all that through MIDI. But I also have the foot switch for the Negus looper down here, so I can have dedicated extra functions there, and then so essentially freeing up 2 of my foot switches to do other things. And I have a what's this? A MIDI captain here, another 10 foot switches. So on the floor alone, we got 22 foot switches that pretty much allow me to control the pedal board without doing a bunch of tap dancing. I could do all my tap dancing right here in this one little area and just look at the screen, and I don't even have to look at the individual pedals too much. I can really just look at the screen, name, to the name presets, and then it goes straight to them. All right, so that's the entire board right there, folks. You got everything. Again, let me explain the audio order straight through just so everybody's clear, and we won't be playing anything to demonstrate. All right, so we start here. This is my main rehearsal, just in and out gig type of thing. Well, just my general bass gig, not my gig. My gig as an artist includes the whole rig, but it starts with an Empress compressor going into an Electro-Harmonix deep freeze into a MXR bass synth, and all this is stereo. It's serial. Series. It says serial. Series. Into the Maris Enzo X, Tone X1 Plus, into the Source Audio Atlas compressor, all the way on the end, over to the Electro-Harmonix tri-parallel mixer. And in this first loop, we have the Future Impact V4 VIP. Second loop, we have the Banana Effects Chimera. And in this last loop, we have this other Enzo X, Maris Enzo X. Out of here, we're coming into the POG 3, over to the C4 synth, then going into the Electro-Harmonix V256 vocoder. Out of there into the Tone X1 up here, and that's also an audio interface. So coming out of here, we're going stereo the rest of the way into the Mercury X, the Jamman Solo HD, into the Negus dual loop stereo, and then ultimately all of that's running into the Canvas stereo DI line isolator. And that just makes my rig simple. So when I'm going, when I need to run to the house for the PA system, all I have to do is run two cables to them, and bam, they good from there. So that makes all of this really simple and not have to, and it makes them not have to run a whole bunch of extra lines for different synths and different keyboards and all this extra stuff. It ultimately makes a complicated rig like this very simple, not very simple, but feasible, because ultimately, this is a lot of gear. It's a lot to process, and especially when you playing on stage. Ask me how I know. But through all of that, I have learned to simply just make it simple with the MIDI. The MIDI definitely will change your life if you want a bigger pedal board setup. So, and then we have the MIDI. All the MIDI chains is running. Signal chains is running. iPads running. I also run a little hub so I can use the Tone X1 as an audio interface and the H4 MIDI Pro that's underneath as a MIDI audio interface, a MIDI interface, excuse me, for the iPad. So, and somebody asked me, so I'm just gonna answer a few questions I've gotten in the comments about my rig, or one, why am I using such a mix of, in some people's minds, levels of pedals. Like, I have things that are really high end, like the Mercury X, but I'm also using stuff like the C4 synth. Why am I doing that? Simply because this has sounds that this doesn't. Just because something is not brand new does not mean, or does not cost a lot, does not mean it's lower quality. For example, the Negus dual loop stereo. Somebody asked, why do I have two looper pedals on here? One, there's nothing wrong with this looper pedal. It sounds amazing, and it has a lot of my loops already stored in it. So it's just easier, instead of trying to transfer all my loops over to the Negus dual loop for my shows. It's just easier to have this on there. Now the dual, this looper pedal, I think folks are thinking of Negus as a Temu type of brand, and yes, I do believe you can find some Negus stuff on Temu, but you can find a lot of brand stuff on there. I mean, it just is what it is. That doesn't mean it's lower quality. I actually met that company at NAMM this year, and I'm actually very impressed with the amount of features. Does it have some flaws? Yeah, but is it like flaws like I feel like it's not gonna work? No, it actually has quite a bit of features, great sound quality. You get 100 dual loops in there, so you could theoretically save 200 different loops, with the built-in memory. It also functions as an audio interface. So if I wanted to record directly from that looper onto my laptop, I can do that, or vice versa. Now, let me see. My only gripe is it's not really a gripe. It's just something that I prefer on a looper. Like when I'm in a certain mode, I know one time I couldn't get it to, when it was doing the second loop. I'm trying to remember which mode this is. Let me see. I believe it's the AB sync mode. So when I was using the AB sync looping mode, I couldn't stop the second loop. If I made a mistake on the second loop and the first loop was already running, I couldn't stop it until it made a complete cycle of the loop. And that's not something I really prefer. I prefer to be able to stop that and clear it without stopping the other track and then just get back to looping. But I can understand that there's something they can fix with firmware, but it does have full MIDI in and out. What else has got? It does come with the extra foot switch. You don't have to buy that, and it's only $279, $280. That's a deal. And it has great sound quality. I'll show you some of the sound quality. Let's see what we got here. I don't know what loop. Let's see. So it's got really good sound quality. So I don't see what the gripe is. You know what I'm saying? And you can switch loops without stopping and all that stuff. And I can do that through MIDI. See, I didn't touch it. Just switch loops, right? I can stop them. I can overdub, undo, and do all this other stuff because it does have full MIDI fully incorporated to it. So that makes a huge difference. Let me see. Yeah, see, I got it overdubbing now. I can stop that, undo that. See, I just undid that, and I got it fading out. So I can do track 2. I can cue up track 1. So as soon as track 2 is finished, it'll go to it. And again, I never actually have to touch that pedal if I don't want to. That's one of the benefits it has over the Jamman Solo HD. I'm just used to the Jamman Solo HD, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's not if you get 2 Jamman Solo HDs and you jam sync them together, and it would do the same thing that the Negus is doing. The issue I was talking about, it would do the same exact thing on the second loop. So I don't think it's necessarily the biggest weakness in the pedal, but I do say that, you know, if they could fix that, and, you know, that would definitely be like one of my only gripes I have with the pedal. Other than that, absolutely fantastic. I'm not into built-in drum loops like that, but it does have a good variety of drum loops in there. You know, I wouldn't buy this pedal thinking it's about to be your built-in drummer. That's not going to happen. So, you know, but I like the hi-hat sound as just a nice, realistic hi-hat sound. Works great. Just needs something to keep time for me while I'm looping and something to lock the loop to, you know, and I can use that live as well without it interfering with the drummer too much. And there's other stuff you can use in there as well. So, you know, yes, I know Negus may not be the premier brand of loopers, you know, or whatever, or effects pedals, but give some of these other brands a try. Like if I never gave Zoom stuff a try, I would have never known how good Zoom's bass effects are. Zoom has some great bass effects. As you can see, I love Zoom stuff. I have a Zoom mixer here. I got another Zoom mixer across the room for the drums. Then I have what is that? A Zoom H5 to record when I'm out. You know, I've had a Zoom B6, MS60B plus, MS70 CDR plus, a Zoom B3, the B3N. I've had the original MS60B, and the original MS50G. So I've had 7 of their pedals, and all of them were great and, you know, lasted a long time. So, and they weren't the most expensive pedals. So, you know, I know people like Marcus Miller even using some Zoom bass effects. I think he's still using the B3N. So, you know, yeah, use whatever you want. Don't let the brands and what people got to say, yes, because I have a $600 reverb pedal does not mean I have to have a $600 looper pedal. The looper pedal doesn't need to be $600. It's just looping. Like, you know, this reverb pedal is $600 for a reason. And when you hear it, you experience it, and you know how to use it, and you know how to use reverb and all the effects modules in there, it's not just a reverb pedal. It becomes your always on pedal, especially as a bass player with the compressor link. The even the preamps in there are amazing. The modulation section, the delay, reverbs, everything in there is top notch. and super configurable. And the same thing with the Enzo X. So yeah, those are going to be cost more. You know, you're not just paying for the actual function, you're paying for the sound and the quality and the flexibility of the unit. Chimera, I really like this pedal, this synth pedal, because it definitely tracks well. And it sounds like it has a nice lo-fi sound to it. Plus, you can get some vocal sounds that you can't really get out the other pedals. For instance, this is the, I'll take these off. This is the sound I made. Right, so that's the genuine pony sound I made on there. This has a very nice format filter on there. It has that. It almost sounds like a vocoder. And that's a sound you can't get out of any of these other sounds. You know, they don't have that same exact filter. So I love the fact that it has a lot of unique features that, and even when you're doing the sampling in there, it doesn't sound like the PCM samples that I will get on the Roland Xenology GX app. It sounds like a lo-fi sampler, you know, almost like an MPC type sampler. You know, but it's got some great features to it. Future Impact replicates all the vintage synths in one pedal, you know. And this is like 350, 400, 600, right? But all of them have different purposes. All of them sound good. You know, I can recommend all of those pedals. And something like this, if you're not into octaves like I am, I do a lot of shaping and sound design with octave pedals. If that's not you, you don't need a POG 3. You know what I'm saying? Get you one of the smaller joints. You know what I'm saying? Get you a Poly Blue, OC5. Those work amazing, you know, and those have a nice poly mode to them as well. So, you know, it just, everything has to be based on what you need. Not what you see me do, not what you see nobody else do. You have to take into account what you do and what you need, because otherwise you just be buying a bunch of gear. Guess what? Every new pedal that comes out, everybody's pretty much going to say it's awesome. Because you know why? Because it's marketing. It's just simply marketing. You know, their job is to get you to like the product in general. My job is to explain the products to you, right? So that's just my job. And if the product isn't good, I have the liberty to say it's not, as you found out on some of my other videos about other pedals if you've been following me. But yeah, you don't have to have the latest synth on the board if you don't want to. The C4 synth still sounds good. MXR bass synth sounds good. You know, the difference between, I like the, you know, this is an actual synth, right? So this is more so like an effects pedal that gets your bass to sound like a bass synth. So it's two different things. Which one would I recommend? I mean, I recommend both of them actually, but if you want the flexibility, C4 synth. If you want something that's just going to be track very well and you don't really, you know, you're not into synths, you're not into learning menus or none of that, you know, C4 synth makes it easy for you. So everything on here is for a purpose. I know it may seem like I just got a bunch of stuff up here sometimes, but if you follow me for a while, you'll see me use all this stuff very strategically. You don't need to force this stuff into songs. I can't stress that enough. I know you see a lot of gear, but you seen, like I said in the beginning, this is all I need for the majority of just regular old bass gigs. This covers pretty much all the effects I would need, because the Enzo X is a multi-effects pedal, and to me, has some of the best modulations And it also has some of the algorithms from the best algorithm, in my opinion, from the Mercury X, which is the Prism in the reverb section. And you get a full stereo delay. You got the best drives, the best filters. I love the Enzo X. But it makes my life so much easier because it's flexible. So I don't need to have a bunch of drive pedals or modulation pedals. I don't need to have a separate reverb pedal on here. This Enzo X does all of that. So for a regular bass gig, this also does octave up. So it's got mono and polyphonic octavers on here. So if I want to do like octave up sound like I was doing with the POG 3, I can do it with the Maris Enzo X. I can also do an octave down with that as well. And along with the bass synths, and it can still be played with a keyboard. So I don't need to do too much more than that on the bass gig, right? My main bass tone pedals is going to be the Empress compressor, the Tone X1, and in this case, on this board, the Source Atlas compressor. Now, when I'm running a big setup, it's the Empress compressor, Tone X1, and the Mercury X. Mercury X finishes out your patches, your sound so good. I can't stress that enough. It's not just a reverb. You can turn the reverb completely off. And that's what I had for my dry bass settings. I just used the compression and dry preamp section and things like that to just add some nice saturation and body to the sound. So, all right, guys, that's all I'm going to do for today. I hope you enjoyed this pedalboard walkthrough. Last question I promised I would answer. Why am I using these MIDI controllers? I don't have a particular reason. This one I've had since college, and this one was just convenient because it has a built-in audio interface, so I can run one cable from here to my iPad and use this to play, key bass or whatever I want to play, and not, if I want to do a small piano gig, I can just take my iPad and this, and bam. But I have this older one down here just because I had it, and it's like I prefer to have two keyboards when I'm working in the studio and doing stuff like this. So, why not use it? MIDI controllers don't get old. They don't have any sounds on them. Like, as long as it's still functioning, it's no need to replace a MIDI controller all the time. Like, I've had this one for like 10, 12 years, and it still works perfectly fine. So, yeah, I think I got all the questions answered of why I'm using this, why I'm using that. But I definitely appreciate y'all. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure y'all subscribe. Make sure you check out my Patreon for all my preset packs for the various pedals that you've seen today and some that you didn't. But if you want to support the channel, you can do it for $1, $5 a month. Also, if you found this useful to you, don't forget to hit that Cash App Super Chat. I definitely appreciate it. And if you want to follow me on all social media, it's at the Bass Negus, Negus. Again, the Bass Negus. Follow me on all social media platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. X. You can find me on all those different platforms and Twitch, in addition to YouTube. So make sure you subscribe wherever you are and follow me whatever platform you want. If you want to catch the clips of the live stream, that's not just the 2 hour live stream. You want to catch the highlights, you can catch that on all the other social media platforms and on my YouTube shorts. But hope you guys have a wonderful day. Make sure you be kind to other folks. Always do what you gotta do. We hanging in there. We gonna stand up when we need to. But I appreciate all y'all hanging in there with me. And this has been another episode of All Bass Creations, Effects, Tutorials, Demos, and Review. I'll catch you guys later.